Welcome to Unpacking Brain Drama. I am Pratiti Pathak, and I am your host and your guide on this self-discovery journey. This morning's episode is going to be pretty mind-blowing. It's episode 193, Your Body as Your Subconscious Mind. Are you living from memory or creating from possibility? So welcome to another transformative episode of Unpacking Brain Drama and Trailblazers. You guys are in for a treat. We're going to dive into this concept that I found to be absolutely fascinating when I first heard about it. And the more I learn, there's a lot of things that we talk about on here. Most of it is just all of my tools for my coaching practice, and I love everything that I teach. But there's so much more to what I love and what I'm fascinated with. And when it comes to our brain, I'm like a neuroscience brain body geek nerd. I'm obsessed, right? So when I first heard about this concept, and the more I learn about it and the more I see it showing up in my own life, in the lives of everything that I do, in the lives of my clients that I coach, and honestly, in almost every human being that I meet, right? Today's title is not by accident. It's not just something out there, but your body as the subconscious mind and living from memory versus creating from possibility, right? I want to begin with that question. Are you just living from memory, right? These are our unconscious patterns and beliefs and programming. Or are you creating from possibility? And I want to begin with that question. I just realized it's just getting so warm in here. I want to begin with that question because what if your body has become your subconscious mind, right? What if the reason that we continue to react the same way, worry about the same things, set the same goals, sabotage the same goals, experience the same emotional patterns? And what if that has less to do with you're consciously thinking about what you're consciously thinking about and more about what your body has memorized? I think a couple months ago, if you guys remember, we were reading in my book club, we were reading The Body Keeps Score. This is kind of like that, right? What if our patterns have less to do with your consciously thinking and more to do about what your body has memorized, right? I want to let that sink in for a moment because most of us believe that change begins and ends with changing our thoughts, right? That's what we talk about here. And it's absolutely true. Once we become aware of a thought pattern that maybe isn't working for us, we can consciously choose to think differently, though it's the emotional part that holds us back, right? And while our thoughts are incredibly powerful, what if that's only part of the question? Right? I think we've talked about this. That's only part of the equation. What if your body has become so familiar with certain emotions that it automatically recreates them without your conscious permission? Today, we're going to be unpacking that idea because if it's true, it changes everything, right? It's the autopilot that we don't even see. If you've followed me for any length of time, you know I talk about autopilot and putting your goals on autopilot. My entire goals on autopilot framework is built around the recognition and the realization that most people are not consciously creating their lives. They're unconsciously repeating them, right? We inherit beliefs, we inherit patterns, we inherit emotional responses, we inherit stories, right? Some come from our childhood, from our parents, from our, the influencers in our life when we were growing up. Some come from our culture, some come from our experiences, some come from our pain, right? And over time, those patterns become automatic. Not because there's something wrong with us, not because we're weak, not because we're broken, but because repetition creates familiarity. And familiarity is what keeps our brains feeling safe, right? Even when it isn't serving us at the highest level or at all. Sometimes, right? Your brain is constantly just looking for efficiency, familiarity, and what works and hasn't killed us, right? It wants to conserve energy. So it doesn't want to spend more energy trying to find something new or recreating something. It wants to automate things, right? That's what we're doing in our lives right now. What makes our jobs so much easier at times is when we're able to just put it on automation, right? It's a beautiful thing. And even though while that's wonderful, when we're brushing our teeth and driving to a familiar route, right, or tying our shoes or riding a bike, that's when it's wonderful. When it becomes a problem is when we've automated things like fear, right? Self-doubt, when we've automated resentment. Showed up in my life last night, right? There's unresolved issues that I have with things. At different moments, it just shows up. Not because I wanted it to, not because I meant to say things that I didn't mean or that were hurtful, but it just automatically comes up because that resentment, that contempt, that self-doubt, that anger, that stress, whatever that is, it's automated. Even scarcity, right? It's just that many of us don't realize that we're not responding to what's happening right in this moment. What we're really doing is responding to what's happened years ago. Like I said, happened to me last night, right? And not because it was intentional by any means. It's just what happens. So how does our body keep that scorecard? Like, what does that really look like? Think about a time when someone said something completely harmless, right? This is an example from last night, right? I was on the phone with a family member. They said things that were completely harmless, but I instantly felt irritated, right? So I want you to think about, when was the last time somebody said something to you that was completely harmless, yet it felt instantly irritating, annoying. It felt defensive, right? Or hurt. Has that ever happened to any of you, or is it just me? The circumstance itself wasn't the issue, right? The reaction was coming from something way deeper, right? My body recognized a familiar emotional pattern before my conscious mind ever had a chance to evaluate it. It's almost like the body said, "Oh, I know this feeling. I've practiced it before. I've practiced it over and over. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I've mastered it, right? I know exactly how we're supposed to react here. And before you know it, we're living inside a reaction that was rehearsed years ago. And even though I myself have done so much work in this area, it like exploded on me like the Godfather last night, right? My body just went into automatic reaction. The words automatically came out. Like it was like it wasn't even me anymore, right? The body is become conditioned, right? Not unlike an athletic trainer in performing a movement that they've trained for many times, right? Think about it. When you have athletes that are professional athletes and they're basketball players and they're making a shot, they've practiced this 1,000 times. They don't even have to think about it. They literally could do it with their eyes closed. It's the same way for everything that we've practiced over and over. So the more often we've experienced an emotion, like we've been training for that movement. What happened last night, that was a movement, that was a reaction. Action is movement. Reaction is movement over and over, right? It's reacting. So when you think about this, the more familiar it becomes, the more often we experience an emotion, it eventually we stop creating an emotion on a conscious level. We don't we're no longer creating it consciously. The emotion begins to create us, right? It begins creating us. Think about that for a moment. It's absolutely insane because the emotion is what made me react automatically on autopilot, right? That's the reason why I say, like, knowing isn't enough, right? This explains one of the most frustrating experiences for me and for many people, right? To have that we have in personal development, right? You know what to do, but you don't do it. Why is that? Right? It's so frustrating, especially for people like me in personal development, because I know better, yet it still happens. You know, you should set boundaries, right? I know this, but I don't, even when I want to, right? I know when I'm supposed to stop worrying, but I don't. I know when I'm supposed to stop comparing myself, but I don't, right? You know you're worthy, yet you still have self-doubt, right? You still doubt yourself. Why? Because information lives in the mind. Transformation happens when the body learns something new. And in order for that to happen, yes, you have to consciously think differently, right? You have to eliminate this thought, but you have to think this one now over and over and over and get the feeling and the emotion from this new thought. But until your body learns that, it's going to want to keep reverting back to that old emotion. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I mean, if you guys are watching this live or if you're watching it later, put a comment in the chat because that means a lot to me. I want to read them and I want to respond to them. Just take acknowledgement, right? Taking acknowledgement alone is not going to create the change, right? Embodiment creates the change. You can read every book, you can listen to every podcast, you can hire every coach, but if your body is still emotionally addicted to old patterns and producing the chemical cocktail in your body that your body's addicted to, you'll find yourself pulled right back towards what's familiar in that old pattern that doesn't work, right? That isn't been working for you and that hasn't been working for you and will never work for you. Not because it's good, but because it's familiar, right? That's the reason we'll keep repeating it. So, are we living from memory? Most people think that they're living in the present moment, but they are actually living in the memory of past moments, right? The past happened once, but it only maybe physically happened once. If you've ever heard the term ruminating, that's when we replay that moment that happened once over and over and hundreds and thousands of times. We replay old hurts, old fears, right? We replay old disappointments and failures and betrayals and old stories that we tell ourselves over and over, even if they weren't true, right? And every time we replay them, our body experiences them as if they're happening now. So I really want that to sink in for a second, because the reason why your body has mastered certain patterns and certain emotional reactions is because even though an event happened once, for your body, like it physically, actually, realistically, and technically only happened once, but you've replayed it over and over and over and over in your mind hundreds and thousands of times. Your body has actually relived that moment hundreds and thousands of times. As many times as you've thought it, your body lived it. And that is the reason that the emotional attachment to different things in our lives is so powerful and so strong and so difficult to break, right? I hear my clients sound just like me when I was doing certain works in my life, and they're like, "What is wrong with me? Like, I know that I shouldn't be doing it, but yet it happened again." And the thing is, and of course, right away they want to beat themselves up for it. I know I beat myself up for a long time while I was trying to heal, right? And we think that now that I know this intellectually, because I'm a smart person, it should be easy for me to change. And it isn't for that exact reason. We learned it once, but our body learned it over and over and over and over because we repeated it over and over and over in our mind with the stories that we told ourselves internally. That internal dialogue, y'all, is very powerful. Okay. So think about that. The event may be over, but emotionally it isn't. Okay. The emotion isn't over because we're continuing to rehearse it. And when we rehearse it long enough, it becomes part of our identity. We stop saying, I feel anxious, right? And we start saying, I am an anxious person. Did you ever notice that for yourself? When you stop saying things like, I've experienced loss, to now identifying with, I am broken, right? We say things like, I failed. And then over time, it sounds more like, I am a failure, right? And that's what happens when memory becomes identity. Okay. So what do we do with that? How do we go from that to creating from possibility? Here's the good news. Okay. Here's the good part. Just because the body learned a pattern doesn't mean it can't learn a new one, right? I think that is always the good news. The good news is we learned this. So now we can unlearn it and learn something new, right? This is where the resilience part comes in, right? Resilience isn't avoiding adversity. It's not pretending everything is fine. It's not toxic positivity, right? Resilience is the willingness to experience discomfort while choosing a new response. It's the willingness to feel unfamiliar, right? Because growth is unfamiliar. Something I've said a lot, right? Discomfort is the currency for growth. Okay. And something that I have gotten really good at is feeling comfortable in feeling uncomfortable, right? Confidence is unfamiliar before it becomes natural. Boundaries are unfamiliar before they become natural, right? Self-trust is unfamiliar before it becomes natural. Peace, oh gosh, allowing yourself, treating yourself to some peace is unfamiliar before it becomes natural. Okay. The question becomes this: can you tolerate the discomfort of becoming someone new? Because the person that has spent majority of their life in noise, chaos, self-doubt, criticism, judgment, deprivation, lack, scarcity, all of those things, is very uncomfortable to become someone who appreciates and wants and deserves peace, quiet, self-worth, abundance, success, happiness, love, right? So can you tolerate the discomfort of becoming someone new? Because the body will always, not just often, the body will always resist what your soul desires, okay? And your soul desires all of the wonderful things, but your body will resist it because it's familiar with the other. Not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar, right? So then it brings me right back to the question that inspired today's episode. Are you living from memory or are you creating from possibility, right? That is the choice. Every day we are given that choice. Every day we are given opportunities to reinforce old patterns or create new ones, right? To react or to respond, to repeat or redesign, to survive or intentionally create, right? Like, are we surviving or are we thriving? That is an opportunity that we get every day to choose. The beautiful thing about being human is that awareness gives us choice, right? And choice gives us freedom. You don't have to keep running yesterday's program. You don't have to stay on the same emotional autopilot treadmill, rinse and repeat cycle, right? You don't have to allow your past experiences to dictate your future possibilities. You can begin practicing new thoughts, new emotions, new actions, new beliefs, and from there you can create a new story. You can create a new result. And over time, your body will begin learning those too, right? And it will lose the rest. And again, it doesn't mean that it won't just pop back up every now and then, because you are human and your body, that holding on to it, that memory in the body, it's strong. It's very, very strong. And the longer you've told those stories, right? I just turned 57, and believe me, for solid 50 years, I was telling that story to myself. It's only been in the last decade that I have been solidly changing those thoughts on purpose, intentionally, and practicing it every day. So that's why I say it is really strong. So I want to ask you some questions to reflect on. Okay. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a few questions. I want you to think about a few things, maybe to journal on this week. What emotional state do I return to most often? Ooh. And then I also want you to think about what you are doing, like what's going on for you. For me, I know that if I am doing certain things, it will trigger those emotions way faster, right? Doesn't matter if you're having a good time, if there's certain people, places, and things, right? If you're in a certain area, if you're in a certain atmosphere, that may trigger the emotions so much faster. So ask yourself, what emotional state do I return to often? And kind of like, what am I doing when that's happening? What feeling has become so familiar in my life, right? Where am I reacting from memory instead of responding to the actual present moment? What future possibility am I being called towards? Right? Because that's also important to know. What would it look like to practice that future version of myself today, now? And then finally, if my body has memorized my past, what do I want it to start memorizing now instead for my future? So, Trailblazers, remember one thing: awareness creates choice. Choice creates actions. Actions create results. And intentional repetition creates a new identity. You are not condemned to repeat your past. You are capable of creating your future. One thought, one feeling, one choice, and one intentional action at a time. So thank you for joining me today for another amazing episode of Unpacking Brain Drama. We are going to start doing these episodes. We're going to continue live on YouTube, and we're going to start doing them on Monday mornings at 9. Join me there. It may go sooner or earlier than that, but I'm going to say for right now, we're going to change it to 9 a.m. and see how that works for everybody. Thank you so much. And if today's episode, as always, if it resonated with you and you think it would help someone else, please share it with someone who might need this message today. And if you're looking for some additional support in identifying these unconscious patterns that may be running your life on autopilot, and where is it running you on autopilot, I would love to have an amazing conversation with you. So until next time, just remember one thing: you have the power to create your results by design, not by default. Thank you so much, Trailblazers. Take care.